Welcome to the One Deal Millionaire Podcast, where we don't just bounce properties, we flip mindsets. I'm JD Allen, Marine Corps veteran, engineering leader, and your multifamily investment mentor. If you're stuck chasing small gains, we're here to change the game. Each week, we dive into strategies to bounce your way to your first million. No fluff, no hype, just real talk, real deals, and real momentum. When you pull up to one of your properties, what do you feel? Pride or pressure? Because I'll tell you this, the way your property looks on the outside says everything about how it performs on the inside. Curb appeal isn't just about looks. It's about first impressions, tenant quality, retention, and valuation. I've seen investors spend thousands of dollars renovating interiors, new floors, fresh paint, granite countertops, and then leave the exterior looking like a forgotten junkyard. And then they wonder why tenants won't pay premium rent or why new prospects drive away before ever getting out of the car. Today, I'm going to share a story from one of my own properties, a mobile home park that had lost its pride. The roofs were leaking, the lighting was terrible, the debris made it look like a landfill, and it was costing me money month after month. But when we turned it around, when we renovated the exterior and focused on the curb appeal, the entire property's energy shifted. The income went up, the tenant base improved, and the value of the park skyrocketed. Now, we're going to unpack that story, the lessons I learned, and the step-by-step process for upgrading any property's curb appeal, even if you're on a budget. And if you want my full checklist, cost tracker, and before and after project guide, grab it at thebouncemethod.com. Now let's jump in. The roofs were rusted and leaking. Streetlights didn't work. Trash and debris were scattered throughout the park. Broken furniture, old tires, piles of scrap. Grass hadn't been cut in weeks, maybe months. It looked forgotten. And when something looks forgotten, people treat it that way. Tenants stopped caring. They didn't maintain their lots. Some started parking cars on the grass. Others left broken items outside like they were part of the landscape. And me, I didn't realize how much it was costing me. Not just in appearance, but in dollars. Prospective tenants would drive in, see the mess, and leave before ever asking about lot rent. The ones who stayed were the ones with nowhere else to go. That was my wake-up call. I had purchased a property that needed more than management. It needed leadership. But I was still learning what that meant. The breaking point came after a heavy storm one weekend. It wasn't a hurricane or a tornado, just a strong rain and wind. But when I drove through the mobile home park afterward, it looked like a disaster zone. Tree limbs were everywhere, trash and debris were blowing down the street, tarps covering leaky roofs that had been patched too many times to count. But what hit me the hardest wasn't the damage, it was the darkness. When the sun went down that night, I realized there wasn't a single working streetlight in the entire park. Zero. You could barely see 10 feet in front of you. Tenants were walking home from their cars in pitch black. Kids were playing near the road after dusk with nothing but porch lights flickering weakly in the distance. And that darkness, it became an open invitation for trouble. Petty crime was climbing, stolen bikes, break-ins, fights, and I couldn't blame anyone for wanting to leave. Because if I were them, I wouldn't have wanted to live there either. It wasn't just unattractive, it was unsafe. I remember walking through one evening with a flashlight in my hand and I thought, this is my property and I'm scared to be here after dark. That was a gut punch because in that moment I realized this wasn't just about paint, landscaping, or operation. This was about leadership, about creating an environment where the families felt safe, where they could actually live, not just survive. And I knew right then that if I didn't take control, this park would keep declining. Tenants would keep leaving. Crime would keep growing, and my investment and my reputation would go with it. That was my crisis moment. When I decided I was done reacting, I was going to fix it from the outside in. After that night, standing in the pitch dark with a flashlight, realizing how unsafe my own property had become, I made a decision. This was never going to happen again. The first thing I focused on wasn't paint. It wasn't landscaping. It was the lighting. Because I knew this, darkness invites danger, but light changes everything. We installed brand new LED streetlights throughout the park. Not just a few scattered poles, we lit up the entire place like a runway. You could see families walking safely, kids playing, neighbors talking on their porches. Even the sound of the place changed. That heavy, quiet tension that comes with darkness, it was gone. Crime started to drop immediately. Tenants who used to stay inside after dark started feeling comfortable again, and you could see pride slowly creeping back in. That was step one, restoring the safety through lights. Next, we turned our attention to the roofs, because every time it rained, leak would start again. Tarps, bucket, quick fixes, it was embarrassing. So we made a plan. Repair every roof one by one. We brought in a crew, sealed, coated, and replaced. No more water damage, no more excuses. And you know what that did? It gave tenants hope. When they saw crews working, when they saw someone actually investing in their homes, they started caring again. They cleaned up their lots, they trimmed their grass, they started believing the property could change. Then came the cleanup. We brought in dumpsters. I'm talking multiple big roll-offs and cleared out every piece of debris. Old furniture, tires, scrap metal, broken steps, all of it went. We hauled it off and didn't stop until the park looked like a place people could actually feel proud of again. We fixed the potholes, repainted the park lines, cut the trees back, and established a simple rule: clean, safe, and cared for, always. And here's what's interesting. As we started improving the physical look of the park, the tenant behavior improved too. People started taking pride in their lots. They picked up trash without being asked. They even started planting flowers and adding decorations. And that's when I learned something I'll never forget. Curb appeal doesn't just attract tenants, it changes them. People rise to the standards you set. If you show them you care about the property, they'll care about it too. Now, once the park started looking better, I knew I needed to make these improvements sustainable. That meant systems. We implemented digital maintenance tracking, every repair log with before and after photos. We used mobile apps for vendors to submit invoices and proof of work. No more he said, she said. No more paying for invisible repairs. Every single dollar spent had a record behind it. And little by little, the chaos faded. The park was lit, the roofs were sealed, the grounds were clean, the money was tracked, and we were no longer reacting, we were operating. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about fixing a property. It was about creating a system of pride, performance, and profit. A system that could scale. Now, I wish I could tell you that once the lights went up, everything was perfect, but it wasn't. When you start taking a property that's been neglected for years, and you begin enforcing standards, improving safety, and showing accountability, you're going to face resistance, and we did. At that time, parts of the park had been taken over by some hoodlums. Group of people hanging out late at night, vandalizing, fights, you name it. There was an unspoken rule. When the sun went down, you stayed inside. The darkness gave them control. And when those new streetlights came on for the first time, it didn't just brighten the streets. It exposed everything that had been hiding in the shadow. I'll never forget the first week after the lights were installed, those hoodlums were not happy. They had lost their cover. We started getting pushback, vandalized lights, complaints. It was tense. But here's where leadership comes in. Instead of backing down, we doubled down. We worked hand in hand with local authorities, invited them into the park, not just to patrol, but to partner. We built relationships with them, those individuals, because they cared about the community. We held meetings with tenants. We explained what we were doing and the why. We told them this park is changing, and slowly the people started believing it. The good tenants started speaking up. The hoodlums realized the environment wasn't theirs anymore, and the energy of the entire property began to shift. It wasn't easy. There were nights where I wondered if we were making any progress at all. Every improvement came with a new problem, a busted light, a broken window, a new pile of trash. But every time something tried to push back, we pushed harder, with structure, consistency, and presence. I made it a point to show up at the park frequently. During the day, after dark, it didn't matter. I wanted tenants to see that we were serious, that someone actually cared enough to keep showing up. And that's when I realized something important about leadership in real estate. You can't manage transformation from behind a desk. You got to be present, visible, consistent, courageous. Over time, crime dropped. Those hoodlums, most of them left on their own because the park was no longer a place for hiding. It had become a place for living again. That was the conflict, fighting for control of my own property. And not just control of the land, but control of the culture. And when we won that battle, everything else became possible. Now, none of this happened overnight, but it did happen. After months of installing lights, cleaning up the ground, rebuilding roofs, working with local authorities, the park started to feel different. The first thing I noticed wasn't even visual. It was the sound. Instead of silence or shouting at night, I heard laughter, music, kids playing outside again. For the first time, the park didn't sound like fear, it sounded like life. Families who used to lock themselves in after dark were sitting on porches again. You could feel a sense of peace that hadn't existed there in years. That's when I knew we had taken back the community. And the results followed fast. Crime dropped, occupancy rose, rent stabilized, and then came the financial payoff. We reran the numbers 6 months after the improvements. NOI was up, expenses were down. And when I had the property appraised, the value had jumped by hundreds of thousands of dollars, all from fixing safety, lighting, and appearance. Now here's what's powerful about that. I didn't build new units. I didn't add square footage. I didn't change zoning or refinance. I simply changed the perception. Because perception changes behavior and behavior changes value. That's the heart of this business. You can buy a neglected property, fix the interiors, and raise the rents. But when you fix how people feel when they live there, that's how you build something that lasts. When I walked through the park at sunset one night, I saw kids riding bikes under the new lights. The same kind of lights that used to get shot out. And I remember thinking, this isn't just a turnaround, this is a redemption. We had transformed that park from a liability into an asset. That moment changed everything. I realized the power of environment. How fixing the exterior doesn't change how the property looks. It changes how people live. That's when I knew this wasn't just about real estate. It was about rebuilding pride, one property at a time. That mobile home park changed everything for me. It started as one of my biggest headaches, a dark, unsafe, crime-ridden property that was barely holding on. But after we brought light to the darkness, literally and figuratively, it became the blueprint for everything I've done since. Because here's what I've learned. When you fix the environment, you fix the energy, and when you fix the energy, you fix the economics. That park went from being avoided by police to being a model of community improvement. From people hiding in their homes to kids playing outside again. And from that negative cash flow to stable income. And it wasn't just because we got lucky, it was because we led. We built systems. We brought in structure. We cared about the small things that most investors overlook, like the lighting, cleanup, signage, safety, pride. And now every time I buy a new property, I apply that same mindset. Before I even think about granite countertops or flooring, I ask, what does this place feel like when you drive in? Because if the outside looks neglected, the inside doesn't matter. You can't collect pride on the rent roll until you first create it on the curb. And that's where technology plays a huge role too. Today, every maintenance ticket is logged digitally. Every contractor submits before and after photos. Every invoice is tracked and every dollar is accountable. No more mystery money. No more guessing what got done. No more I think the light got fixed. I know it did. That's what allows me to manage more units with less stress. It's what allows me to scale. And it's what allows me to keep buying properties that most people are scared to touch because I have a proven process that works. That's what the bounce method is all about. Buy, operate, upgrade, normalize, cash flow, and exit. It's not theory, it's what I live by. That mobile home park was the first time I truly understood the operate and upgrade stages because I wasn't just improving buildings, I was improving lives. And that's the kind of investing that builds both wealth and legacy. So here's my challenge to you. Drive by your property tonight. Look at it through the eyes of a tenant. Does it feel safe? Does it look cared for? Would you live there? If the answer is no, start tomorrow. Replace the lights. Clean up the debris. Trim those bushes and fix the signs. Do the little things that create pride and the big things, cash flow, valuation, reputation, will follow. And if you want my full step-by-step system, the same one I use to turn that park around, You can find it at thebouncemethod.com. I'll give you the exact tools, templates, and processes I use to operate efficiently, scale fast, and build communities that thrive. Because this business isn't just about flipping properties. It's about flipping mindsets. It's about turning fear into freedom, chaos into clarity, and neglected spaces into places people are proud to call home. So keep leading, keep lighting the way, and as always, keep bouncing. Thank you. That's it for today's episode of the One Deal Millionaire Podcast. If you got value from this, share it with a friend who's ready to stop playing small. And remember, wealth isn't built by watching, it's built by moving. So take what you learned, apply it, and keep the velocity of money working in your favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and stay in the loop at thebouncemethod.com. And until next time, keep bouncing forward.